So that was your week last week. It was, I don't know, it was pretty cool for me. Not a lot happened, and Star Wars is back. So yeah, we got a pretty substantial dosage of Star Wars last week. We got Star Wars Episode 7 coming out on DVD and Blu-ray and all that, and we got the first Rogue One trailer. We got a nice Star Wars spin-off story there. But let's be real here, Rogue One's pretty much the Star Wars appetizer. It's the movie that they're releasing this December to make 2017 seem like it's not that far away, but let's be real here. We're all thinking about the real meat here. We're thinking about Star Wars Episode 8. Or as it's currently being called in production, Star Wars Space Bear. I'm not making that up. That's the real production title right there. Well, Space Bear. That's probably not what it's going to be called when the movie actually comes out, but wouldn't that be just be the best? The Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, The Force Awakens, Space Bear. I like it. It's got a nice ring to it. But a lot of you guys enjoyed the Fantastic Four video that I did, and I was already planning on making a Let's Fix series on this channel, but let's kind of do a variation on that for a little bit. We've all had our theories on what Episode 8 should be and what should be in it and what we think will happen next, and so I decided I'm going to give my thoughts on how I think Episode 8 should go. Space Bear. Don't you think for a second I'm not going to take advantage of that opportunity? So as the title crawl said, this film picks up about 4 months after the events of The Force Awakens. The Resistance is still really messed up because the Republic, all those planets got blown up and it's still all chaos and whatnot. The galaxy's not sure how to handle this sudden burst of strength from the First Order. But still, even now, the Resistance isn't quite the underdog in this fight. They still do have quite a few cards to play, as we see in this opening scene. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this opening scene exists pretty much solely for the purpose of having a cool action scene where we see all our characters kind of meshing. This is essentially the Avengers out in the woods taking down that Hydra base from that second Avengers movie. We kind of get to see the last big adventure before everything kind of gets dark and terrible. So essentially, it's a mission to go into a First Order base, kind of at first sneak in, but realistically, after a few minutes, it stops being a spy mission, and they just bring in the big guns and the giant ships and all that, and they just start blasting this place to bits. And we see Finn and Poe just kicking all kinds of ass. We see them at the height of their power. We see some straight up 360 no scope type stuff going on out there. And we also get some cool moments where Finn apparently got his hands on one of those cool spinny baton things that what's his face, Nines or Trader or whatever his name was had in the last movie. He's just taking out guys and showing off his mad skills. But anyway, long story short, they get to the control room of this base where they plan on stealing some information on where some of the other bases are and where some of the stormtrooper facilities are. Because hey, if you take out a few stormtrooper bases, or I don't know, find some people like Finn who really don't like being brainwashed to work for the First Order, then yeah, you can kind of take away some of their power. But unfortunately, they only find 1 or 2 other bases, and they find nothing on the stormtrooper facilities. But of course, as they're failing to find this new information, lo and behold, who walks in? Captain Phasma. And of course, she's pretty pissed. Because last time we saw her, she was getting thrown to a trash compactor, and she wants revenge, so she pulls out her own spinny baton thing, and we get to see a cool clash of essentially Stormtrooper on Stormtrooper action. And we kind of see some of Finn's anger come out. Like, all that fear in the last movie is starting to become anger and starting to become aggression. And, like, he's really resenting the fact that Phasma had him under her control for, like, however many years he was in there as a Stormtrooper. But while Finn definitely shows more of his skills in this opening sequence they did in the last movie, where he pretty much got knocked on his butt every possible chance, he still is not a match for Phasma, who, after like a minute or two, just knocks him over. But of course, there's Finn to save the day, shoots her in the shoulder, knocks her back, and says, alright, we're getting out of here. They flee the base with the little information they have, and they go back up to the command ship, where of course, Laura Dern's character is waiting up there, and she is essentially the angry police commissioner, from what I've heard, all the leaks about her character. She's a really weird character. Like, she's not into people. Like, she surrounds herself with droids and alien creatures and all that. And she really is not a fan of Poe or Finn. And Poe is sick of dealing with her at this point in the war. And Finn, of course, having had to deal with Phasma all those years, is not big on having another figure that is essentially exactly like Phasma looming over him and his friend. We see a lot of tension there. Laura Dern's character is, I guess, kind of justifiably angry that they used so many resources and lost some lives in trying to capture this information. They weren't even completely sure that there was going to be that much information in this base, and so a lot of people lost their lives for just no reason. And she suggests that maybe Finn wasn't as much of an asset as they initially thought. But as these three are going to start going at each other, of course, Leia walks in and stabilizes the situation and says, okay, that wasn't exactly our best mission, and admittedly, we need to be more careful, more precise in gathering our information and our intel in the future. But hey, we can work with what we've got here. We've got like, I don't know, like 2 or 3 bases that we found out about. That's great. That's perfect. That's something. We have something to go off of and something to plan around in the future. And that's going to be a big point for this kind of area of the story throughout the movie, is that these three are going to be a problem together. I mean, Poe and Finn versus Laura Dern's character, that's going to be an issue for a lot of this section of the movie. But as long as Leia's there, they can kind of get along with each other. But should something happen to Leia, well, that's going to fall apart. But now let's get to the main event. We got Rey and Luke training on that island. We cut back to that island on that planet, and we see Rey kind of meditating near the top of the island, and we cut to flashes in her head. We see some cool montages of her training. We see lightsaber combat. We hear Luke's voice saying stuff like wider stance, counter, form 3, get defensive, now attack, now counter, and stuff like that. You see her gradually lifting larger and larger things. So you're lifting boulders and like levitating, and I don't know, maybe if you want to like throw in a laugh, have like do that. But then it starts to get a little more serious. We see flashes of Rey as a young kid. We see that scene from the last movie where Rey as a little kid is being dragged away while saying, "No, don't leave!" And we see more flashes of Kylo Ren, and we see an image of someone running towards Rey and then stab. We see Kylo Ren stab the guy through the back, and he drops to the floor, and Rey's all shocked. She jolts away from her vision. So that's when Luke walks over and goes, "Hey, what's going on?" And then Rey goes, "Well, just some unsettling visions." And he goes, "Yeah, it's some dark times." So anyway, you know what'll take your mind off Kylo Ren? You going on an adventure. Here, I just found out there's like one of those lightsaber crystals in a cave not too far from here. Why don't you go out and check it out? So she goes to go check out that cave, and then you get some cool like action stuff where you see Rey is not only as awesome as she was before, but now she's kind of honed her skills a little bit more. She's got like parts of the cave collapse, and she jumps over pits and stuff like that. And she comes across like a pack of like space wolves or space bears. No, wolves, because there's got to be a pack of them, and they, you know, gotta have that metaphor for like when she's facing Kylo Ren and the Knights of Ren and all that, because that's cool. But yeah, she kills a bunch of wolves with her lightsaber, and she gets her crystal for a lightsaber that she's going to build, because it's getting near the end of her training, because she's got to build that lightsaber. But as she's in this cave, she notices some paintings on the wall. And of course, you get kind of a variation of that really cool prophecy from the 2003 Star Wars cartoon, where you see the painting of the guy who lost his arm in combat, and he got that new, like, magic arm, but so he could protect his family. But as he grew big and strong enough to protect the people around him, he lost control of the power, and the power killed everyone he loved and consumed him. And of course, that's the metaphor for Anakin Skywalker, but of course you'd say, well, that's kind of the flaw of a lot of people that go to the dark side. A lot of them went because they wanted more power, and some of them did it out of love and out of wanting to protect their family. It's the big display of the Jedi equivalent of the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Of course, Rey doesn't have that commentary at the time. We just see these images, and she's tripping out because she thinks she's tripping out because she sees the paintings moving and all that, and that's creepy. So she goes back and tells Luke about it, and he explains that whole thing. He gets all uncomfortable because, well, you'll see eventually. But speaking of darkness, let's go and see what Kylo Ren's been doing this whole time. We cut to a big snowy mountain planet called Moraban, which this is the planet where all the Sith met and did their evil stuff in the mountains. And where it's snowy, I don't know why. And let me just preface this by saying I'm straight up taking a scene from Bandit Incorporated's what Star Wars Episode 3 should have been. Because it's an awesome scene, and I feel like it could work really well repurposed for Kylo Ren, to an extent. So we've got our villain on Moraban climbing up the mountains, and in the background we hear echoing through the valleys, we've got Snoke's voice talking about, oh, your shoulders are aching. You can feel the pain coursing through your blood, but that's good. Use it and convert it to power and whatnot. And he starts giving the history of Moraban, where this is the planet where powerful dark side users used to come, where they were far away from the eyes of most of the galaxy. And this is where they found pain, and the pain made them strong, because the pain gave way to anger and to rage and to hate, and it made them stronger. And you get that whole deal. And by the way, Kylo Ren has his helmet on. That will play a factor in a bit. So he's crawling up the side, everything on his body is burning. He's actually got some bloody knees, because he's been climbing up the side of mountains, and he's all scraped up. And you see some blood trickling into the snow. And then at the top of this mountain, we've got the shadowy figure of Snoke off in the corner. And he's not quite the 35-foot tall guy from the last movie, but he's pretty tall. He's like, I don't know, like 8 feet tall. And lo and behold, Snoke has a gift for him. Oh, I wonder what it could be. He opens up this box that he has laid out in front of him, and inside is Darth Vader's lightsaber. It's been speculated that Kylo Ren's lightsaber, the crossguard one, was destroyed when Starkiller Base blew up. So Kylo Ren might not have his own lightsaber for this movie, but how cool would that be if this guy who essentially worships Darth Vader ends up with Darth Vader's lightsaber and uses that throughout the movie? And so he's losing his mind. He's totally like fanboying out. Oh my gosh, this is my grandfather's lightsaber. This is amazing. And we hear just a short ways away, the boy is not worthy of it. And there we have Benicio del Toro's character, this shadowy dark side user guy. Kylo Ren's like, hey, who's this Randy? Snoke is like, it appears that we've both been keeping secrets from each other. Survive this battle and maybe we'll exchange that. And wait, what? And Benicio del Toro's character comes charging at him with a lightsaber ignited, and like, oh shoot, we gotta fight. And then Kylo Ren force pulls Darth Vader's lightsaber over, and boom, we gotta fight. And it's apparent really quickly that Benicio del Toro's character is the better fighter. Kylo Ren is severely outmatched when it comes to just pure lightsaber fighting, even though he's done some more training. And Benicio del Toro's character spends this entire fight just going after Kylo Ren on how could you be defeated so easily at the end of the last movie? How do you lose to a turncoat stormtrooper? How do you lose to a poor insolent girl? Or whatever they called Rey. And of course, just this bullying and like this total picking on, just making him angrier and angrier. But even though he's clearly getting a little bit more power from the anger, he hasn't quite reached that point yet. He's still getting his butt whooped. And it's at the height of Kylo Ren's frustration and at the height of Benicio del Toro's haughtiness and, like, judgment that Kylo Ren comes at him and Benicio del Toro just lops his arm off. And Kylo Ren's just, like, sitting in the snow, just holding onto his arm, just completely in shock. And that's when Benicio del Toro, I'm gonna call him Randy. Randy comes over and just says, "Look at you, a poor boy playing dress up, trying to be a Sith Lord." And with the Force, he, like, kind of rips off Kylo Ren's mask to reveal what Kylo Ren has become. And if you remember in the last movie, he got that big scar across his face. It didn't heal so well. For those of you who don't know, a lot of dark side people, like, when they get super into it, like, their skin starts to gray and they get yellow eyes. So he's essentially kind of a monster that looks a little bit like Kylo Ren at this point. Like, he's not full monster mash, but he is, like, graying face, pussy wound across his face. If you didn't like his face before, we're not winning anybody over with this one. But Randy's totally caught off guard by Kylo Ren's appearance, and he kind of notices that, and so he gets up, still holding his arm. He's like, "There's no pretending. I know what I am." And he lifts him up with the Force and shoves him back. But of course, because he's also a Force user and he's not stupid, he kind of catches himself, gets back in position, and Kylo Ren, with his left hand, gets the lightsaber, and he's gonna fight this guy exclusively lefty. But with the power of acceptance and knowing that he is evil and he's more monster than man at this point,
Scott earned the power of self-respect.
he's more focused, he's more able to remember what's going on. Snoke is actually giving him tips at this point. He's like, "Yeah, back, upper hands, get more aggressive." And then Kylo Ren disarms Randy and then has the lightsaber right at his throat. And that's when Snoke comes in and breaks up and is like, "Alright, nice. Good job. You come a long way, my apprentice." He's still need a little bit more training, but I like what I'm seeing. And we see Kylo Ren's handless arm come up, kind of motion towards his helmet that got knocked off. And he lifts it, and he puts it back on his head with the Force. And that is the last we see of Kylo Ren's actual face for the entire movie. We're left to wonder for the next 2 movies just how bad it's getting under there. Because he might not need it for medical reasons, but, like, the dude's scary. The dude has warranted covering his face. And on that shot of Kylo Ren recovering his face, we cut back to Rey having more visions. We see that scene again of the guy getting stabbed, and we get other flashes, and we get a cave painting, and we get some flashes of light, and we see that Rey is starting to dig into her memories a little bit. So we essentially get kind of informed that Rey is sort of aware of the fact that she has repressed memories, and we see her meditating and trying to get through that. Meanwhile, we cut from there to see what the Resistance is doing, and we see that Finn is interviewing the last member of his stormtrooper group, who they managed to capture. You see, Finn was in a group of 4 stormtroopers before he abandoned. We had Finn, we had some guy named Slip, who was the guy who got shot and then left that bloody handprint on him in the beginning of The Force Awakens. And then we had Nines, aka Traitor. So this is Zeros. This is the last remaining person of their 4-man group that they were in before Finn betrayed them. And so we get an interrogation scene where Finn is trying to get information out of Zeros as to, like, where the stormtrooper base would be. And this is where we kind of delve into Finn's character a bit. I know this whole video I haven't really gone into a lot of detail about some of these scenes, but this one in particular I'm not sure of all the specifics on it. But this needs to be a scene where we kind of address some of the problems with Finn's story. Yeah, Finn turned, but at the same time, when he did turn, he turned on a bunch of real people. These weren't robots. It wasn't like as soon as he saw violence in that village, he became human. He was a human being, and there's a bunch of other human beings in clone trooper costumes who died at his hand, and he has to come to terms with that and find a way to figure out what is right and what is wrong, because as we get deeper into the darkness, it becomes harder to see what is light anymore. If you get more into the gray areas of war, where, yeah, clearly there is right. From his perspective, clearly there is right and there is wrong, but he does wrong in order to accomplish right. So you get a bunch of cool character moments there, and then you get more conflict between Laura Dern's character and Poe as they're trying to figure out what to do with the information that Finn is getting them. So we cut back from that to Rey, who we see as is finishing up her lightsaber. And just for the sake of variety, I think it would be cool if it was a yellow-bladed lightsaber, just because, I mean, we don't really see a lot of those, and those were... We haven't seen any of those in the movie, and yet those do exist in, like, other Star Wars type stuff, so I don't know, it'd be cool to see that. But anyway, she finishes that, and she goes back to her meditation, and she sees these, once again, she sees these flashes, and that thing with Kylo Ren, and she kind of digs deeper, and she realizes these memories weren't suppressed by me, they were suppressed by somebody else. Somebody was messing with my head. And finally we get an image of, the image of Rey, young Rey on Jakku, getting dragged away, going, no, why? Why are you leaving? And we pan to the right, and there is Luke. And that is when Rey realizes Luke has been messing with my head, and that is not okay. And so she takes her lightsaber, and she is about to confront Luke, and they get into a little bit of a fight, but Luke's heart clearly isn't in it, so she kind of wins, but you very much get the impression that he just, like, flick his wrist and, like, send her to space. The Luke I'm setting up in this movie is essentially one of the most powerful Jedi in the universe, but even he knows when he's messed up. He talks about how he taught her when she was really young and taught her the basics of the Force, and how she was such a powerful student even at her young age. And so when Kylo Ren came through and just wiped out all his apprentices, he knew that he had to keep her safe, and so he suppressed all of her memories of prior events to keep her from being discovered. He's all like, you left me on Jakku, just a giant sand dune in space, for 12 years. Like, her entire character in the first movie is built on the fact that just this insecurity of not knowing who she is, or where she comes from, or what she's meant to be. She's very different from Finn's character, who was set up to do something his entire life, and then suddenly realizes that's wrong. Rey thinks she's a complete blank slate, and has no idea where she's coming from, or what she's supposed to do with life. And so she's really angry with Luke that she would do that to him, and that's when Luke drops the bomb. He goes, look, the Force is strong in my family. My father had it. I have it. My sister has it. My nephew has it. My daughter has it. We get the big reveal that Rey, as most of you have probably predicted by now, is Luke's daughter. So this wasn't just some random important pupil that he was sending off, this was his daughter. You kind of see in his mannerisms and in the way that he justifies himself that he really was scared that he was going to lose his daughter. That his mistakes and his screw-ups were going to cost him his closest family member. And so you see a little redemption for Luke. But before you can think about this for too long, we hear Chewie wail. That's right, Chewie's been here the whole time. There's a distress beacon in the Falcon, and Luke has to go check the message and see who is calling them. Cut to a seemingly random assembly of bounty hunters who are all walking into an arena type place. They're all kind of separate, they're not really in a group, but they all realize they've been hired by the same person. They're like, okay, wait, what's going on here? This is weird. And then you get a voice over the intercom saying, ladies and gentlemen, you have all been brought together to kill the same target. This target is here tonight. If any of you manage to kill this target, you will be rewarded 10 times what you were initially promised. They're like, alright, cool, where's the target? And then the lights go out. and you start to hear screaming. And then one of the bounty hunters who has like a flamethrower or something, like shoots something and something catches on fire, and in the light you see the hooded and caged figure of Kylo Ren. The Darth Vader lightsaber ignites, and people gonna die. He just cuts through the room, and just no one has a chance, no one gets a single hit on him until it's just him and one guy in the middle of the room. And if you really want to do fan service, you could say it's this guy. So it's Kylo Ren versus Mark Ellis. But yeah, he actually pulls up a fight. That Scottish dude pulls out another one of those light baton things, because apparently they're giving those out at this point. They're just on street corners, just handing them out to anyone who wants to fight people with lightsabers. But anyway, they get locked in a fight. But then, with the little electric thing, he hits Kylo Ren's new robotic hand, and the robotic hand goes completely limp and drops the lightsaber, and he has to dodge and with all that. He has to dodge the light thing, and like he gets hit a couple more times, and then finally he picks up the lightsaber and fights him lefty again. And this is where Kylo Ren gets really brutal. You see the full anger come out. He's like force pushing him, throwing him. He has the guy beat, but he wants to just kill him in the most brutal way possible. So you get like flips the lightsaber, turns the lightsaber off, like flips it around, like smacks him across the face, and like kicks him in the knee. It's like his knee like cracks in a weird way, and like backhands him with the lightsaber, and then turns the lightsaber back on and just stabs him through. And it's brutal and it's scary, and you will learn to respect Kylo Ren in this movie. If not for that brutal death, then for what happens next, because a giant bit of light comes out of the darkness, because Kylo Ren rips part of the wall out, throws it across, and then with his good hand, force pulls one of the members of the Knights of Ren towards him, and just gets in his face and is like, "What did you do with this arm?" This was supposed to be magnetized, so that something like this would not happen. And he's like, "Oh, sorry, sir, that won't happen again." And you're like, "You're right, it won't happen again." And he just like flings him against the wall, and he's dead. We are Sans one member of the Knights of Ren, because that dude done messed up. And to be totally honest, I haven't figured out how to string these next couple of scenes together yet. We ultimately find out who Snoke is, a very old Sith figure who was connected to the Skywalkers and to this whole universe. So yeah, you know, let's just say it's Plagueis. It's Darth Plagueis. I said Plagueis like I'm British. Plagueis. But now he goes by Snoke, and he essentially is growing weaker, but in sort of like a Voldemort kind of way. He has found a way to cheat death, so long as, well, instead of with the Horcruxes, where he has to store his soul, he has to find Sith artifacts that will give him more power and kind of heal him, because in his current stage, he is halfway in the grave at this point. But Luke knows that there is a part of the galaxy where a Resistance base happens to be, and also there is an ancient Sith artifact that will give Snoke more power if he can get his hands on it. So Snoke is going to try and kill two birds with one stone and go after a Resistance base with his full might and get his hands on that Sith artifact that will give him a little bit more power. So Rey and Luke are off to go to that Resistance base to try and stop that from happening. And on the way over, Luke and Rey are still kind of rocky, but Rey starts to see things from his perspective. They finally start to repair that relationship, and they actually do kind of bond a bit. So as they're landing on the planet, it's not exactly like an Endor type planet, but it is very foresty. But in the middle of this gigantic planet-wide forest is this huge city that's kind of built into, like, imagine just like a piece of Coruscant that's just planted in the middle of there, but it's completely abandoned. It's super creepy. You got like all these skyscrapers and all these buildings that are just completely deserted. And in the middle of the city is a secret resistance base, but you wouldn't be able to tell because of just the sheer like ghost town vibe of the entire place. And as Luke and Rey walk into one of the casino buildings, Luke suddenly starts to get like a total like shining moment where he gets memories of all the people that were there and all the vast numbers of people partying it up in there with humans, with their aliens, and all those people that were there. And then we fade from that straight into a flashback where, give or take about 15 to 20 years ago, Luke walks up to the bar at that casino, and Han is there. And this is right after Kylo Ren has just taken out all Luke's apprentices, and Luke is completely shell-shocked, and he just sent Rey away. And these two friends are meeting for the last time. And they both kind of share just their pain and their regrets about where they might have gone wrong with parenting, and how they both try to control their kids, and how the more they try to control them, the more they push back. Han asks about Rey, and Luke has to lie and say that Rey is dead because he doesn't want any chance of anyone, even his best friend, finding out about her still being alive. And surprisingly, near the end of the conversation, Han is the most optimistic. He's like, well, you know, this is probably the worst that it's ever been in the galaxy, but at some point it's gotta get better. I can still see the light out there. I can still see there is light, and there is hope for the galaxy. So we fade back to reality, and that's the last we see of Han Solo. And you really get a sense for how empty this place is after seeing all those people there and all those lives hanging around there. But then, after that sad scene, we get Luke seeing Leia from across the casino, and they run to each other and they embrace. And it's been 12 years since they've seen each other, so it's a nice, happy, emotional moment. Then they go to the base, and they're starting to prepare for an attack, but they have no idea what's coming. Snoke and the First Order are bringing a whole bunch of stuff to the planet, and they are woefully unprepared to deal with what is coming. So Chewie takes off in the Millennium Falcon to try and go get more help from the Resistance. But just a few minutes after he takes off, some First Order ships come down, and the fighting starts. And at first, it's just a wave of stormtroopers, and Leia kind of shows her chops as a general and kind of uses the landscape of the buildings to their advantage, and they use guerrilla tactics and set up explosives, and like got snipers in cool positions. It's essentially like, imagine that fight scene from Children of Man, but with lasers and like over like a huge scale, and you kind of alternate between a ton of action and like this tense build up to actions. And then the Jedi start getting involved, and Luke just, he really shows how powerful he is here. He's just cutting through wave after wave of stormtroopers as they keep pouring in. And then we see the Knights of Ren, and they're still pretty easy to handle. You still got Rey holding her own against a bunch of them. Not all of them have lightsabers. Again, a lot of them have those like lightsaber resistance weapons. Luke is easily able to handle them. Rey struggles a little bit, but she's mostly evenly matched with them. And that is when the two heavy hitters come in. We got Snoke and we've got Kylo Ren. And this is where the fight gets pretty dire for the Resistance. A huge wave of stormtroopers come in, and the Resistance numbers are starting to dwindle a little bit, and we get fights between a few remaining members of the Knights of Ren who are not incapacitated or dead, because I think about like 3 or 4 of them straight up get killed. Between Snoke and Luke, we get this cool magic fight, sort of like with Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, like that Voldemort and Dumbledore thing, where you got like fire and you got, you know, force energy and you got lightning and all that stuff, and you just see a cool fight that we should have seen between Palpatine and Yoda, but we didn't because lightsabers. Luke actually puts his lightsaber away because Snoke doesn't fight with a lightsaber, he just uses dark side stuff. Meanwhile, we're getting the ultimate lightsaber fight on the other side as Rey is fighting off Knights of Ren, and then here comes Kylo Ren, the master of the Knights of Ren, to take care of her. And this is this is a little bit different fight from before. Like, granted, in The Force Awakens, she was on her heels for most of the fight. In this one, she's holding holding her own a bit, but then it gets to the point where she realizes that Kylo Ren is a lot better than the last time they met. So she has her yellow lightsaber and she pulls out Luke's blue lightsaber and tries to go double lightsaber here to try and even it all out. But Kylo Ren's getting angrier and more aggressive and therefore more powerful with his fighting. She's like throwing stuff at him, he's easily cutting through it, and then he starts throwing stuff at her, knocking you over, and the first thing that happens is that he cuts her yellow lightsaber in half, like, well, not in half, but like the last fourth of it off, so that like it's completely useless now at this point. And so she drops that to the ground. And so she's just fighting with the blue one at this point. They're fighting for a little bit, and then he knocks it out of her hands, and then just shoves her back against a wall with a ton of force, energy, and Luke's lightsaber kind of lands in the dirt in sort of a similar way to where it was back on Starkiller Base in that scene, and this time he pulls for it and he gets the lightsaber. So it's like a parallel of the last movie where he couldn't get it because Rey was the more powerful Force user. Now he has clearly shown his dominance, he's redeemed himself, he has the power, and there are some more revelations to be dropped here. Rey yells at him, "You betrayed our family!" because she's put it together by now that if she's Luke's daughter, that is her cousin. No, Rey, you betrayed ours. What are you talking about? Meanwhile, on the other side of the clearing, Luke is proving his prowess as a Jedi and has just defeated Snoke and knocked him over and severely injured him with the Force, and he turns around to see this absolute nightmare of a situation happening. Cut back to Kylo Ren saying, "Oh, he didn't tell you, did he? Rey, you joined us." And we see all those flashbacks coming back, and we see specifically that scene of Kylo Ren stabbing a guy, but then she remembered, the memories come flooding back. This guy was about to kill her, and Kylo Ren saved her, and then she gets memories of them as kids and how close they were and how he was kind of protective of her, and when he was swayed to the dark side, she followed him immediately, and get all these flashes of Rey kind of standing by his side as he fought these apprentices of Luke, and then we see Luke capturing Rey and wiping her mind and sending her away, and it all just hits Rey all at once, and you see this horrified expression on her face, and she realizes, shoot, he's right, I did that, and he suppressed all of this. He lied to me. I thought, well, he didn't tell me that he suppressed this much of my memory. You had so much potential, Rey. So much opportunity for power, for control, to set the universe right, to be all that you can be. He robbed you of your potential. He robbed you of your destiny. And at that moment, Luke can't take it anymore.
It's time for you to shut up.
Totes.
Comes flying in with his lightsaber, and he and Kylo Ren lock blades, and the Knights of Ren carry away Snoke's terribly injured body, and they take him inside into a medical place, and Kylo Ren and Luke are in this super intense fight, and Luke is starting to show some rage, Kylo Ren's starting to show him some emotion too. It's a very emotional fight, because Kylo Ren has now seen the full extent of the lengths that Luke will go to keep his daughter away from the dark side, and Luke feels like he just lost everything now, because his daughter likely hates him now. And Rey is just sitting there completely shell-shocked at what is going on, and she has her head in her hands, and everything around her just kind of numbs, and it's just background noise at this point, and she thinks, I just gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of here. And so she force pulls over what's left of her yellow lightsaber thing, the thing with like, it's in two pieces now, but she pulls it over, and she gets up and she runs, and she keeps running and running and running until she's into the woods, and she keeps running. It looks like all hope is lost until suddenly, out of the sky, a familiar shape comes up, and it's the Millennium Falcon, and Poe and Finn are at the controls, and they're bringing with them a big, gigantic resistance ship, and it becomes clear that this is not enough to fight off the massive waves of fighters that the First Order has brought to this fight. This is essentially a rescue mission at this point. And so Finn and Poe come down from their ships and they clear a path, and they try to get Luke on board. Leia has been injured at this point. To what extent, they're not totally sure. They get as many resistance troopers on there as possible, and they get the Millennium Falcon back up to that resistance ship, and they just hightail it out of there. There's nothing else they can do at this point. And as this movie starts to wrap up, we see Poe Dameron, Finn, Laura Dern's character, and Luke all on the bridge of the ship. It is just now like pulled into light speed, and it's hightailing it out of there. And Laura Dern, for the first time in the entire movie, is completely quiet. The whole group is pretty silent, and then Laura Dern finally says, well, this is it. We're more like the rebels now than we ever were. We're the last of the resistance. And then Luke looks over and says, how many more bases do we have left? There's only about 20-something bases left. We're greatly outnumbered, outfunded. We're gonna have to go back to guerrilla tactics. And then Finn speaks up, and he says, in a similar way to how Han Solo said it in that flashback, we still got a fighting chance, though. There's still hope. There's still light out there. Somewhere. As we see our four main characters staring out the window, seeing planets and stars passing by, the music picks up, the slow, dramatic Star Wars music. And we cut back to Kylo Ren and the Knights of Ren on the planet. One of the members of the Knights of Ren is emerging from a stone temple holding a box. And he hands the box to Kylo Ren, and he's walking over towards Snoke. And he opens it up, and there's like this big stone pillar thing, like roughly the size of a lightsaber, but a lot thicker and like made of stone. And we see Snoke kind of struggling, gasping for breath, and Kylo Ren kind of eyes the stone as if he could give it to his master, or he could take the power for himself. And then we cut from that to Rey running through the wilderness, out of breath, gasping for air, running, shaking, not sure what to do. She doesn't know who she is anymore. The scales have fallen away from her eyes, and she knows all of her history and all that. She knows where she comes from, but she isn't any closer to knowing who she is. And then she looks up at the sky, and she sees the sunset, and she sees the light and the darkness. She sees the sun disappearing behind the horizon and the stars rising. And she looks up into the stars, and from across the galaxy in the ship, Luke sees those same stars. There's no dialogue. There's no talking. Just looking at the sky and recognizing how far apart they really are. And wondering what comes next. Roll credits. So that's a basic outline for how I would do episode 8. Obviously, there's a lot more meat to throw on this. There's a lot more scenes I could pad out. Just like with my Fantastic Four video, I'm just gonna say that I know not all of this is perfect and airtight. There's still a lot more stuff to explain. For a general direction of where I want the story to go and what emotions we want to get across, we want to feel with the characters, I feel like this is a good representation of what I would want to do with it. But hey, Rian Johnson is a fantastic director and a fantastic writer. I'm sure whatever we get is awesome. I just hope that, I don't know, I'd like to see some of the things that I've mentioned here, like, I don't know, something more interesting with Rey's backstory than just who is her parents. Like how, like with the mind-wiping thing, you have something with free will and with, I don't know, that kind of stuff. And I really want to see Kylo Ren come into his own and be completely evil and completely become that villain. And maybe a little bit of, I don't know, a little bit of grayness with Luke, where he's still making the same mistakes that his father made and all that stuff. Like, I don't know, I just think these are cool elements, although I will wait and see what actually happened in Star Wars Episode 8. But what did you think? Did you like this version? Do you think Did you think it was terrible? What do you think about it? Like, write it in the comment section below. Let me know what you would do with this movie. What do you think needs to happen in episode 8? And by the way, what would be some good titles? I love Space Bear, but I don't know if that'll sell, to be totally honest. So apparently the card ran out of memory at that point. But legitimately, I want to get your guys' thoughts on this. I love when you guys comment. It's the best. Yeah, so I've been hearing rumors recently that it might be Echoes of the Dark Side, which that's a pretty cool title, but I stand by my guns. I'm saying Space Bear, let's do it. But anyway, sorry it took so long to get this video out. I'm just, as of recording right now, I just finished editing this. I'm about to publish it and stick it online. Also, shout out to all the people who made the really cool art stuff. I ran out of time to put all the links to all the people who made those art pieces, but I will definitely put annotations and stuff in the description and stuff in the comments, because there's some talented people making fan art these days. But anyway, I took a while on this one just because I wanted to improve on the last Let's Fix episode with Fantastic Four, and I just wanted to give a visual aspect to it just so you guys weren't just sitting there bored. But yeah, did it because I love you guys. I'm so grateful that you guys are willing to take time to watch these videos, and you know what? You're awesome. So, there new video this week, already have the footage shot, so all this, like, waiting 3 weeks for a video, that's done. So, yeah. Coming this week, new video. And, until then, God bless, and stay saucy.